Hello and welcome back to the final hour of this year's Institute of Community Reporters annual conference, the third one to date. And the theme this year, as we all know, has been the future of lived experience. And I don't know about anybody else, but I've sat in on a number of the sessions today, and wow, I've been absolutely blown away by some of the conversations and some of the stories that I've heard, and so much of the kind of content and ideas. And we're going to hear much more about that from the people who have been facilitating some of those sessions this afternoon as part of this broadcast. But I think it's fair to say that we've more than covered all the themes that we set out to today, what we want for the future of lived experience, how lived experience can help us achieve social justice, how we and other organisations can work better with stories and the people who share them, and the kinds of spaces and the safe spaces that we need that are secure enough for authentic storytelling to take place. So I know a lot of you have contributed. If you haven't contributed already today, welcome. It's good to see you, even if this is the first foray into the conference this year. And I say it's the final hour, but actually immediately after this, we do have an after party. So from 5 till 6, assuming we don't overrun on this session, there will be an after party on Zoom. So if you want the link to that, then, and you haven't got it already, then please email enquiries@peoplesvoicemedia.co.uk. And I'm being reminded from the green room that if you want a drink during the after party, you'll have to bring it yourself. And I think Isaac's definitely going to be on the gin by the look of things, which I think he deserves, because actually he had a significant birthday yesterday, but I'm not sure that I'm supposed to mention that. Anyway, we're going to do a bit of a recap on what's happened today. Some of the sessions that people have been in, and then we're going to invite onto the screen the people who've been hosting and facilitating some of the workshops today, and we'll explain a little bit more about that when we get to that point. So yeah, there's been quite a number of workshops that have happened. We've talked about our ideas for what a manifesto around working with lived experience stories might look like. I know there's been lots of sharing of experiences of storytelling and the difference that it is making. So I think some of you are in the session around closed cultures. There's been lots around kind of the mental health stuff. An absolutely amazing session that I sat in on, and forgive me because I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Afrikanawi session, just allowing the stories and the experiences of people just to wash over. That was a great experience. And then this afternoon, a fantastic hour and a half with people thinking through a day of action. How can we come back bigger and stronger next year as part of the conference, and actually, you know, really get on the agenda some of the important things that have been talked about today. And here we are in the live broadcast, final hour. to hear back from everybody who's participated today. Do put your own comments and thoughts in the chat. It'd be great to hear from people. Leon's doing a fantastic job of sharing some of the comments as they come up on the screen for everybody to see. We'd love to hear your feedback about the day and some of your highlights and some of the low points as well. If there's anything that hasn't been so good, it's always good to share that with us as well. But before we invite the panel on and the people who've been facilitating the workshops, we're going to kick off with another of the short talks that were pre-recorded. And this time we've got some words of wisdom from Tony. And Tony is going to talk a little bit about what are the most important things for him when we're thinking about telling stories and collecting stories. So Leon, if we can hear from Tony, that would be great. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Tony Mackenzie, and I'm going to be talking to you about my 3 points I think that really need to be considered by people telling their lived experience stories and by those collecting stories. The first step is to make sure you've checked out, is now the best time to be telling a story? Am I in the right place emotionally? What is going on for me? So many people with lived experience who are telling their stories often end up having to tell the worst version of the story in order to get a service. So we want to be able to tell the stories without it being re-traumatizing or triggering. Step 2, when you are telling your story, be prepared. If bullet notes help, if writing it out helps, make sure you double space it, make it in a font that's large enough for you to read, because sometimes in the live event, even if you've had rehearsals in your live event, it can just bring up emotions that you don't expect. Step 3, how are you going to be supported afterwards? Do you need a cup of tea, slice of cake? Do you need to go for a walk? Do you need to be alone? Do you need somebody to sit with you? All of these things should be considered before we even embark on telling the stories. And points to remember that storytelling, while it can be very powerful, it can help get funding, it can help promote a certain situation or cause, it can also be very, very traumatizing for the person telling the story. Things to consider: what impact will it have on your family, your friends, your neighborhood? Where is this story going to be posted? If it's online, if it's newspaper, local media, whatever, all these things really needs to be taken into consideration. I think storytelling is a very powerful tool, and the first concern is how can we tell the stories to empower rather than trigger or traumatize. And I think these 3 simple steps, that wraparound care of the support before, the support during and the support afterwards, are really, really important to make sure when we are telling stories we're keeping everybody safe and still achieving our objectives. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, absolutely. Great reminder that we want this whole experience of storytelling and sharing our lived experience to be a really positive experience and to make a difference. And lots of reminders there of the things that we need to think about. Maybe my favourite at this point in the day is the need for a cup of tea and a slice of cake, but nobody's actually brought me tea or cake yet today, so I'm not quite sure what's happening there. I think I probably need to do something quite quickly to rectify that. So yeah, thank you, Tony. Really, really important points that you've made there. So we're at that point in the afternoon that we're going to invite the people who've been out there with you all day, facilitating the workshops and conversations, to the screen. So yeah, Leon, let's move on. Wow, hello. Welcome everybody to the screen. Gosh, so many more friendly faces, which after this morning's session is quite an achievement. I should just apologise on behalf of Adele. She's having camera issues, so unfortunately we're not able to see her absolutely beautiful outfit that she's wearing today. But there, Leon has managed to get a photograph of what Adele is looking like right at this moment. So I absorbed that because unfortunately we're not going to be able to see Adele in the flesh, but we will be able to hear her. Before we kick off and actually hear from each of you about the workshops that you've been facilitating, I'm just going to explain to people what's going to happen, and then we'll do a quick round of allowing you saying hello, who you are and which workshop you represented. Actually, no, we'll do that first and then I'll explain what's going to happen. So let's just do a quick round. I'm going to go around the screen. I'll start with Laura and go that way around. So if you just want to say hello, Laura, who you are and which workshop.
Hi, I'm Laura, and our workshop was called Our Lived Experience, Telling Our Stories, Where Does the Power Lie? And that was co-facilitated with Baljeet.
Brilliant, thank you. Oh, I don't know what happened there. Baljeet, do you want to introduce yourself as well? You're on mute, Bal.
Oh, okay.
There we go. We can hear you now.
Okay, right. Just to say hello, and it was a great experience for me to have done the workshop with Laura, and thank you to everyone. That's it.
Thank you. Hamid.
Thank you so much. Hello, hi, I'm Hamid Khan, and I facilitated a workshop today called The Lived Experience of Mental Health During COVID-19 Pandemic. And it was about getting people to tell their stories of positive mental health, negative mental health during the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was quite interesting that everyone has a story to tell related to the COVID-19 pandemic and mental health. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hamid. Adele.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adele, and our workshop today was the story of the storytellers, which we run Africaniwa. And ours is a tribe where we speak the language of unity in diversity. And the tribe was really honored to be part of this workshop because we believe we are the cradle of storytelling. It would have been an absolute travesty without us. So it was such an honor to be part of the workshop. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chris from the user-led group Community Action to Inspire Hope. I facilitated a face-to-face workshop invitation to a brave space, rethinking safety in storytelling. And I was with another 16 persons with lived experiences, peer reflecting and brainstorming. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Chris. Out in the real world, and what a beautiful day to be outdoors with people. Couldn't have picked a better one. Isaac.
Hi everybody, yeah. So I'm Isaac, and we had a space where we looked at the impact of storytelling on a particular project, which was Closed Culture, and those that had shared their stories really led the session, and it was really important for them to really lead that session.
Thank you. And Kath?
I am Kath and I work at PVM, and I was part of two workshops today. One which is called The Future of Good Lived Experience, and one which was a call for action. So about putting together a campaign, a call for action for lived experience and how to go ahead with that.
Thank you. And last but by no means least, David.
Hello, sorry. Hello, I'm David. I was part of facilitating the co-production collective based on Chit Chat. I have to say that carefully. Based on four values of challenging, human, inclusiveness, and being transparent.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. Wow, what an amazing lineup of people we've got here as well. So many, again, different experiences that we can that we all share or that are unique to us. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've all got to say. So what's going to happen now is I've got all your names actually in a hat, and it wouldn't be it wouldn't be right if it wasn't a pirate hat. I'm sorry. So all the names of the people here are in my lovely pink pirate hat, and I'm gonna I'll show you again. There we go. You can see it on the big screen. Lovely pink pirate hat. I'm not going to put it on my head because all the bits of paper will fall out. So I've got all the names in the hat. And we're going to go around. I'm going to pick a name out of the hat, and we're going to hear from whoever's name comes out of the hat. We're going to set this is a bit of a mass live experiment as well. So please do bear with us. If it all goes completely wrong, then we're just working out Camaradas principles that it's okay to be a bit rubbish. But we are going to try it and see how it goes, and it'll be fine. But we're going to set the clock. Leon's got it all figured out. I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen, so I'm just going to pull names out of the hat, and I'm just going to invite people to talk for 2 minutes. And Leon's going to do some magic stuff in the background. But our horn will go off at the end of 2 minutes, and the speakers will stop. And then we're going to have a bit of an open conversation between us about the feedback from that particular session. He's timing me now, and I'm not under pressure or feeling stressed at all, which is great. Thank you. But also we've got some extra special videos and things that the participants, people here have shared with us, and some photographs and stuff. So we will intersperse those with what's happening. So I'm not going to take up any more time. I'm going to shake this is exciting, isn't it? I'm going to shake all the names in the hat, and I'm going to put my hand in, and I'm going to pull out one of my bits of paper here, and the prize. Here we go. We're going to kick off with Adele. Adele, you've got your 2 minutes to give us some feedback about your workshop, and then I think we've got a bit of a video to play, and then we're going to have a bit of a conversation
right
as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Kat, and everyone tuned in. It was such a joy to tell the tribe that we had been commissioned for the first time, because we started Africaniwa at the back end of October, and for us, it was the opportunity to create these spaces and have some of the very, very unpopular stories by the very, very unpopular voices. And we started our storytelling session as we would back in the day, by the fireside, as we told the stories. We will hear them from our grandparents. So there was a bit of music, drumming, and all that. And then we began. We decided to take the format of people coming in to use their own lived experience story in a way to help us reflect and then answer the questions of how do we create safe spaces, and then how are we able as organizations to use people's story, the stories they have shared, and what does it mean to even use the lived experience story to go on to fight for social justice. And it was interesting because it meant different things to different people in the tribe. And we had the opportunity to hear a 96-year-old veteran tell his story from many years ago, igniting the sense of patriotism. And it was an incredible moment as well to have Black Poppy Rose, who is in Ghana at the minute, working with the 96-year-old and his organization. And it was a beautiful collaboration and co-production to see how they're working tirelessly in a way to rewrite themselves back into history as a people who are ever so often forgotten. And there was so much to share in terms of people's personal experience in helping to answer these questions and what the tribe in the whole had to share. But we were able to sum up everything we do at Africaniwa in a beautiful video, which I hope we are going to have the privilege to share with the rest of the community. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll go straight into the video, and then we'll bring people back on, have a bit of a chat.
Sewan kasa wutri hwa ye boni. In another breath, if you do not tell your story, be sure someone else would. and they might not tell it right. For centuries, our stories have been untold, mistold, uninterpreted, and misinterpreted through Western lenses, resulting in the historical distortion and marginalization of our narrative. My name is Afrikaniwa, and I was born a storyteller, just like my mother, my grandmother, and their mother's mother before them. For us, we hone in the ancient tradition of storytelling, and as custodians of the sacred core, we believe the human story should be central to our understanding of the world. Stories told underneath the moonlight, by the fireside, to entertain, reprimand, train, teach, correct, and preserve our rich culture and heritage. But today, I'll tell you a story about my grandmother, Akosua Onyamaka, the one-woman ensemble, the one whose name meant God has spoken, the one who truly spoke the oracles of God, the one on whose tongue lived oracy and literacy. She cladded her body with stories, strung parables like pearly beads to adorn her waist, myths and fables nested in her silvery grey hair, idiomatic expressions she wore like trinkets, proverbs were the palm oil with which she ate her words, psalms and songs lingered on her breath, and to me, she would pass on a priceless piece of family heirloom, priced far above rubies, emeralds, opals, or any other precious mineral. The incredible gift to tell a story. So I continue to tell these stories because our stories are best told by us. Stories to celebrate ancient traditions and provide modern solutions. Stories that nurture, empower, build confidence and promote resilience. Stories to remember the unremembered. Stories to tell, retell, write and rewrite ourselves back into history. Stories changing the narrative and owning our narrative. Stories which become our shared story, our shared history, and our shared humanity. For when a people are forgotten, their humanity is lost. I am the story of the lived experience, and my name is Afrikaniwa. My lens, our story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very powerful. Yeah.
Our shared history, our shared story, and our shared humanity. It's bigger than anything that seems to surprise us. And the photos you saw were all the exhibitions we've done telling some very unpopular stories. The farmers who grow cocoa and their very impoverished lives. The women at the back end of Umoja, the unremembered heroes of their empire. And some of the ancestors who went through the doors of no return, who would never come back, whose story we don't ever so often hear. Story that becomes our shared story.
Yeah, thank you. So true for so many people whose stories, don't get, I don't know, there's just so much in there, isn't there? Any thoughts or reflections from people?
It's just so powerful. It kind of takes your breath away.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally takes your breath away. And I love that it's shared. I love the fact that it's sort of a little screening from each of the different people. So it's really collaborative as well. And Adele, your voice is lovely, and it's poetic. The script is poetic as well. So yeah, really fantastic piece. Yeah.
I was going to say, it was very difficult to keep the tears back. It was just so powerful.
Yeah, and I had the privilege of sitting in on the session, most of it over lunchtime, and just hearing some of the stories and experiences of people, and in spite of some of the kind of technical issues that we were facing as well, because that's the reality when you're kind of trying to engage with people right across the globe in this way. But yeah, the stories, and sorry, Adele, I can't remember the chap's name, but the elderly chap who told his story.
XW1 Joseph Hammond.
Joseph, that's the one. Joseph Hammond, just brilliant, and his passion at 96 and enthusiasm to still want to tell his story, and the work that's happening to make sure that his story continues to be told and continues to have an influence, in years to come. Yeah, Isaac.
I think this is a really good example of how we get people to connect with the heart, and actually stories are all about people's heart and experiences. So for me, you can't do story gathering, story sharing without really connecting on that human heart thing. And that makes a difference, because we live in a world where people just disconnect with their emotions and their heart. This really reminds us this is about people and heart.
Yeah, somebody said a very significant phrase towards the end of the session this afternoon, which was, I am a story in myself. And I just think we talked a bit, didn't we, about stories just get put in a box over there, but actually we are all stories, and we are all living stories. And
that's right. We're all giving a performance, but without a rehearsal for life.
Yeah, that's a lovely way of putting it, Baljeet. Thank you. Yeah.
I wish I could get rid of some of the parts of my performance, but there you go.
Yeah, and that in itself, thinking back to this morning and Maf's kind of input around camarados is that thing about actually part of our stories are the bits that are a bit rubbish, and we have to appreciate and accept that we are all, not perfect, and we shouldn't be striving to kind of present ourselves in that way, really, ever, not even in a professional capacity often, but we do fall into that trap of wanting to present a story or a version of ourselves to the world, and I think that was touched upon in some of the other workshops as well during the day. I'm going to go back to the hat because I'm mindful of the pressure of time and see who comes out next, and we'll continue the conversation. So David, we've got you up for your 2 minutes next. So we'll just get Leon to reset the timer, and then you can take it away.
Yeah, I was on the part of the co-production collective, looking at, as I stated, about the chat. Now, it's really, really interesting that when you get a group of people, you all come up with loads of different concepts, ideas, and particularly looking at the one that sticks out for me the most is challenging, and how it feels around power, and how you have to break those power imbalances. Otherwise, you end up with the traditional term as known as the hoggers, people that actually like to dominate. And what was going through my mind when I was actually listening and I was facilitating was you could actually take those hoggers and try and think of a different way of including them without them actually trying to overtake your meeting. I mean, I just got so much. It's just so powerful stuff. And well, this is my first time doing this, so I'm just trying to do as much as I can. And the other thing I think is just really about being inclusive and how inclusivity covers a whole range of areas right through to transparency and decision making. And it's how we make those decisions and how we move things forward, and how we think of different ways in which we can approach people and how we can get our messages out there, which is the main thing. Can't think what else to say.
You're fine. You're very nearly at your 2 minutes. But just to think about, I think it was a fairly unstructured. I'll let the horn finish. Fairly unstructured space. Then, David, did you kind of invite people just to talk about whatever was on their mind?
I just said I said to them in mine one was over to you.
Yeah.
I said over to you because it's important that we allow you to have your space.
Yeah, and I think there's something about that in itself. How powerful is it just to invite people into a space without actually having a very strict agenda or a strict set of expectations about what you want people to talk about or even achieve in that space. And so, you know, all those things that you have talked about and covered in that session really came from a place of what was important to people. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I would say so, definitely.
Yeah. Any other reflections from people? Kath, I know you've got a comment here.
Yeah, I thought it was really important what you said about inclusivity being about being transparent, you know, transparency and decision making, you know, but so it's actually, you know, it's not just about being, creating safe spaces and accessible spaces and making diverse spaces, but it's also about that sort of power shift as well, about, you know, decision making, and also about transparency throughout, you know, through everything. So I think that was really important, because I don't know, I probably have considered it, but I don't think I've actually worded it, if you like, or, you know, gone, oh right, yeah, you know, those things actually make inclusivity. So I think they're really good points, and I think they're worth, you know, it's a good conversation starter for what is inclusivity, because, you know, there's so many places and people who think they created an inclusive space and possibly haven't. So
if the inclusive, I'm just interjecting with the inclusivity, I've just realised it's about being aware of people's care and support needs without actually ignoring them, because they're, you know, we're all different. We've all got different cares, but specifically when I don't like to pick on people like this, but when you think of people with lived experience, you know, that is the more important thing. We're finding that we're being, you know, pushed further and further away without being at the center of things.
Yeah, so important. And that came up a lot in some of the other sessions as well. David, Kath, did you want to?
Yeah, I think the question is about who says what's inclusive, you know, and are the people who are saying what's inclusive the people who have the lived experience of being excluded, you know? And so that's what I think is, you know, when you're saying about decision making, you know, it's just very interesting and important, and people tend to use, you know, we've got a lot of language and people use words and they get used a lot, and, you know, and I know from places where I've worked before about, you know, creating inclusive spaces, are people just using that word and ticking boxes, and or is it really, you know, a a good space, a space of freedom, a space where people can grow, a space where people can feel themselves and able to express themselves freely, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, thank you. Just time for one more comment before we move on to the next one. Or not, that's fine. I shall go for the hat, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about some of these other things. So here we go. Next up, we've got Hamid. So yeah, let's hear from Hamid. What happened in your workshop?
Thank you so much. And basically, our workshop was about the lived experience of mental health in the COVID-19 pandemic. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I had a turnout of about between 6 and 7 people. One dropped out after 20 minutes, and one had to leave after 40. But it was more about the quality of people that we had. And what was interesting, that how much emotions people were carrying. And what we did as part of the workshop, we got people to tell their story. They had to pick a part of a story during their lockdown and pandemic. And people talked about how they try to keep a positive mental health, doing various outdoor activities, walking, trying to stay on contact with people through Zoom, online, WhatsApp. And then we also talked about people, how they've been affected in poor mental health due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And the whole idea was getting them to discuss their lived experience and tell the story of their experience during the pandemic of mental health. And what we were trying to get is them to re-acknowledge that mental health affects us all, and small things, big things, environmental things, things out of our control do have an impact on us. And they talked about how students were affected because of the pandemic, how mothers have been affected, how young people have been affected, how people who had employment and went to work every day were affected. And what came out interesting, that all the participants said, I hope this is just a start and we will have some follow-up sessions. And that left me with a feeling good, that people want a space to tell their stories. People want a space to share their lived experiences. And we need to make that happen collectively. Thank you.
Oh, this is working so well. Thank you. We haven't got another 2 minutes though. Thank you, Hamid. Sounds like a really interesting conversation again. I'm just going to invite other people to kind of reflect and comment, because that's why we've got you here.
I think that when Hamid was saying how this has all affected mothers or old people or right across the board, it just shows how important universally people face problems. There isn't one group or one community. This kind of thing can affect everyone. It's a universal issue, and stories are universal in that they can be shared.
Yeah, thank you. You made an interesting point as well there, Hamid, around the quality. And this is something that's been discussed a lot in some of the other sessions as well, and that comes up a lot in terms of the bits of work, that when you're talking about stories and people's, real life experiences in this way, it's not about numbers anyway. It really is about the quality and the depth of conversation and the insights that we can draw from that. So yeah, again, really, really important point. Any more reflections from people?
Yeah, I just want to echo that. In that I was a bit concerned that I thought, oh, maybe there isn't enough people in our workshop to make it relevant. But I'm totally into quality and not quantity. But you find that everyone relates to everybody else's story if they can actually express it in the way that they want to, and that they feel comfortable with and safe to do so. I think that's been discussed a lot. And it's really been moving. I think the whole thing. I know that I'm like really feel alive right now, like exhausted but alive.
You need cake.
I think also what we need to acknowledge very quickly is that people are Zoom fatigue, people are online fatigue, and still to come to our workshop and spend an hour shows that there is an interest out there. And we are talking about something that a lot of people, ordinary people, may not even know what lived experience means, probably don't even know that they've gone through some kind of bad mental health due to the lockdown and COVID-19. And, considering all those factors, I think that the number I got, I would have liked more people, don't get me wrong, but the numbers I had was the fact that nobody was silent, everybody contributed. So that made me feel happy, because I thought, imagine if I had 12 people, I wouldn't be able to divide the time, and the time would have just run out doing introductions, and then it would have been time like just tell a bit about yourself. But actually having a small number meant they had more interactions between them, and they felt safe space to open up about some personal sensitive stuff, because they felt there was a safe space. Thank you.
Thank you, Hamid. Yeah. Adele, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just reflecting on Hamid's workshop and the number and the people, the conversations they had. And African, well, we have this moment we share where when we meet, the stories we hear, it's that moment when it's as though we are mirroring each other's wounds. And that moment where you see my wounds, I see your wounds. Really, for some of us, that's when healing begins, So even in that small number, we are able to bear our wounds. And in that moment, when we mirror each other's wounds, that's when real healing begins. So I thought that was really important to add to the conversation.
Thank you. That's a really beautiful image. Thank you, Adele. I'm going to go back to the hat because I don't want to be able to miss out on people sharing. So who've we got up next is Chris. So we'll invite Chris to the screen to share. Chris has been out in the real world.
It feels like an Oscar-winning moment, and it has been an absolute pleasure to be part of this initiative. We are the brave ones. We took to the real world with carrying flip charts and pens and reflect together. If you ask 17 people what we could do to improve safety, it is highly likely you get 17 different answers depending on each one's lived experiences, where they live, how they live, a myriad of factors. And these questions about safety return with intensity because of the times we live in. And they push us, these times of uncertainty, to be more creative, to reimagine rather than we would have otherwise been comfortable with in pre-pandemic times. A note on terminology and where we situate the term lived, a person with lived experience. Our group believes that lived experiences, or sometimes living experiences, as some live with mental health conditions in the present, are central to one's identity, personhood, the dynamic experience of life, including participating in a range of activities. My safety goes through our safety, referring to a collective we. And this is why we think it is important to rethink safe spaces through intentional community building. And this is the story of our user-led group that started with 3 members back in 2019. We felt that there were barriers to overcome. They felt restrictions in the dominant spaces with all the problems that have been mentioned by other workshop facilitators. And we took the step, if I can get 30 seconds more, please, to create our own safe space in the way we understand it, we experience it, sometimes physical space, but also imaginative space, through participating in arts and culture. And our members were quite happy to record two beautiful poems and to offer it to this event.
Thank you. Are we going to play those poems now, Leon?
Invitation to Brave Space. Listen together, we will create brave space. Because there is no such thing as a safe space, we exist in the real world. We all carry scars and we have all caused wounds. In this space we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be. But it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side.
Mask up. Full line in. I'm alone now. Shoved into a side room. On the eerily silent ward of the MS clinic. I just signed a paper of consent. Detailing all the possible side effects I might expect. Headaches. And dizziness. A skin rash. And nausea. Liver function problems. And death. You need to take it. The neuro said. But it's your choice, of course. You always have a choice. Which is funny because I don't remember choosing any of this. And I know I should be thinking about how this new treatment could kill me. But all I can think about is how this time last year I finally got round to paying for that disabled person's cinema card. All excited about taking girls out on discount dates, eating popcorn in the dark, and kissing and stuff. But then of course, COVID. I haven't used the card once or kissed a fucking thing. I'm living in an Alanis Morissette song. I swear. I need this new treatment, but it could kill me. Isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
Wow. Very powerful. And Chris, one of the things that really struck me when you were feeding back then was this whole notion of actually we talk about lived experience, don't we? We talk about things as almost being in the past, and actually this is not, this is living. This is our living experience. This is our reality day to day. And this comes up time and time again for me in terms of this space of working with people and stories, is that actually we expect people in service land to be in a good place to share their stories. And we don't open the doors and accept them as they are living through experiences in the way that we all do. So yeah, it's another really good challenge there, and something else for us all to really kind of think about and consider. So thank you. Any other reflections from anybody else?
Yeah, I really love the poems as well as what you were saying, and I'm not sure if everyone gets the chat, but those things about reinventing, although not reinventing the wheel, and reimagining ourselves, but also how society, the community, you know, on a sort of a small level, but on a bigger level can work, is like where the power of individual stories and how they move into the collective really bites, I think really is powerful. And yeah, wow, I just think this is amazing. So I'm sorry, I'm not feeling that articulate.
That was great, Laura, really clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you, Kat, for all the comments in the chat. You know, we focus on resources, and we, for good reasons, we say that our resources are scarce and we demand more for our groups. But it might be a choice to focus on abundance rather on scarcity. And the abundance may come on ideas, on stories, on experiences. A living experience may affect you in daily life, and it does for quite a few of us, but it may offer you a dynamic perspective of life. It can open up to new possibilities. And this is a way, to say that these living experiences add to one's life.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. I'm going to move us on to the next person. We can come back to any comments that we've got on these at the end, but we've got Isaac next. So let's bring Isaac to the screen and hear about the experiences of the closed cultures. It is closed cultures you're talking about, isn't it, Isaac?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So take it away. Leon will do stuff in the background.
Sure. So I wish I wasn't at this conference talking about lived experience, because when we're talking about lived experience, we're often talking about multiple disadvantage. Our group of people that came together support and live and breathe really poor care. And this conference is about social justice. So they have experienced really poor care. They've had their rights removed, yet they still want to share their stories. One, to really, so other people can have a better deal. And the conversations that we had today were really, really important, because what happened was people wanted not only to share their experiences in a particular project, they wanted to ensure that the next group of people that came along that would be at risk of close culture could have a different chance of not experiencing that. And Eleanor didn't want to come here, but she wanted to talk about this whole notion of lived experience. And she said there's been a sustained attack on lived experience and the importance of lived experience. And we're often invited into a space to share our experiences. And if it's too difficult for people to hear, they talk about trauma and they exclude us. And actually, our stories do have trauma, but we have the right to tell their stories. And often we're sharing stories that are not our stories, they're people that we support. And she talks about her daughter not being able to share her story because she doesn't have access to, spoken word in the way that you and I do, but has the right to her future where she's not going to be abused, she's not going to be locked in a room, she's not going to experience, neglect and all of that kind of stuff. And how you support those stories is really important. And the thing is, it's about giving people a platform. She talks about having a platform to share the stories beyond the project. I feel so emotional. I don't, it's really touching.
It's been a really emotional experience, I think, the whole piece of work. And I suppose one of the reflections is, some of the feedback from CQC or the Care Quality Commission was that they just through, we're not talking big numbers of stories, but they really got that we weren't going out for big numbers of people, that we were really going out to hear stories and get into the depth of stories, was that they were open to the fact that they were learning things that they didn't even know that they needed to learn, which is a big step, for an organization like that. But I guess it does, it's been a hard experience for people, and people are still coming back and sharing their stories. And is it, the question that's still there is it really going to make a difference? What is the impact of that really going to be for people? Any reflections from people?
I think it's quite interesting, the last thing you said, Isaac, and it relates a little bit to what some of the comments which came up in the workshops today, which we were talking about accessibility and making it accessible for people who don't have, speaking communication skills to be able to tell stories, and different ways of telling stories in different methods, using different communication methods. I think that's a really important thing, so we're listening to everybody, and everybody's able to tell their story in whatever way that might be.
I think also what was interesting, taking part in the closed cultures, is that you don't even realize that you were actually part of a closed culture until you get to realize what is closed culture, and then you realize there are some positives, but most negatives also part of closed cultures. And it just kind of gets people to talk about their stories, which means through the stories you're raising awareness that what should not be accepted in closed cultures. And it was really fantastic working with Isaac today and just being part of that workshop, because you just got to hear about people just being themselves and sharing their emotions. And it takes a lot of courage to feel that safe to share to the level that people were sharing with us today. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mead. And can I raise a point that I think is really important to raise, that actually not all spaces are going to be safe, and there might be some times that it is really difficult, but people have the right to share their stories in ways that make them stronger. And sometimes that means that their spaces feel a bit unsafe, but it's about the facilitation and the access.
Yeah, a really important point. Thank you, Isaac.
Can I just say as well, just quickly getting there, about the support as well, support for the person who's telling the story, which goes on afterwards. I mean, Tony had said that in his piece before, didn't he, in his film, which was brilliant. He had a really good guidelines to safe spaces, but also support for the person who's facilitating as well, and story gathering, because it can be hard to facilitate that and to take that on, and then go away and go back to your life and make your tea or whatever, so I think it's important to think about support and how support is within this as well.
Thank you, Kat.
Yeah, I think some of the same things came up for us. I mean, people were really moved and touched, and actually shared a lot more than they thought they would, which was just it was just awesome, really. Within the space of an hour and a half. But I think we're going to talk a bit more about that in a minute.
We are. Shall we? I'm not going to take the name out of the hat. Shall we just go with that, Laura? Because we've just got yourself and Kath left. So let's hear from yourself and Baljit about your session. While Leon's sorting himself out, I will say we're going to overrun a few minutes on this, but the party, I'm hoping, isn't going to start without us. Just putting that out there, Hayley, if you're listening. Laura and Baljit.
So, Baljit, you're going to go first. Are you?
Okay.
Or do you want me to? Yeah.
No, I can do it. It was an incredible group. Most of the people I hadn't met before. And in some ways, the conversation is the same conversation that I've been having for a long time. But what was really powerful was the urgency during this period in terms of austerity, COVID, and everything else that's going on in the world, how urgent, how important it is to get those stories across and to get them to the right ears, if you like, so that they have an impact, and how we do that. And we talked a lot about that. There were some incredible people in our group that have really made changes, developed projects, even to the point of changing laws. So it was very powerful. And on a personal level, I was completely shocked because it touched something in me that I didn't even know I had, that there was something there that I need to talk about.
Yeah, I think it oscillated between like the personal and the structural, between the personal and the political. It moved between those two. It's not binary though, by the way, but it did move between these two sort of emotions all the time. And the people the people in our workshop have actually done it. Some of them had changed the system and liberated themselves and others. So it was full of hope as well. But I I think we were very concerned that we have a collective voice. So we were very privileged that one of our participants has created this film where we can give, the whole group gives the feedback, and you'll see that. And it is about giving way, I think. Sharing power is about giving way as well as taking power. So
Thank you.
That's going to end me.
Brilliant. Thank you, Laura. Leon, I think we're going to play the film that they've put together. This.
Keep control, keep your own choice, and co-produce. Nothing else. Go for it.
So for the last 35 years, I've fought really hard to bring about change. And for a while I did, I did okay. The last 2 years I've been really ill and I haven't done anything. And today has given me a lot of encouragement.
People have made terrific changes to services and their area and all sorts. And it's kind of humbling and inspiring and hopeful, really.
My takeaway points would be to be passionate, be kind, be caring, and make a difference.
And it's not just about them telling their stories to get an outcome out of it. It's actually for the person who's telling the story to also feel ownership and progress from doing that.
Get with other like-minded people, because there definitely is strength in numbers. And I think we've got enough expertise around the table here today to actually start really making some change.
Already we've forged a pretty good working relationship with each other in just over an hour. And it illustrates the point, really.
When we do share our thoughts and feelings and personal experience of life, that is where the hope and the passion and the sense of connection can sort of thrive.
And the power is both personal, political, sort of micro, macro. So we have to think kind of the collective, but the uniqueness of the individual as well. So how we do that. Watch this space.
Wow. Thank you. Impressive on so many levels.
Can I just say that we're going to continue as a group now? So, I mean, what more could you want? It's just brilliant. Yeah, everyone wants to carry on. So if anyone wants to join in with us, let us know.
Brilliant. We can share details of that, I'm sure, after the event with people, Laura. But yeah, that really did give me goosebumps. What an amazing experience for people. Any other reflections?
I like the hopefulness of it. I like that people were ready to do something, make a change, and yeah, it's hopeful, and that's good.
Energy.
Sorry, Baljeet.
I was just saying there's a lot of energy along with that hope.
Yeah, that's good. And I think that's an energy we've found in a lot of the spaces today. And hopefully as we move out of the conference today and into tomorrow and the next week, we can take some of that energy with us and keep really making a difference. Kath, I'm going to invite you to do your summary, and then we'll have a couple of minutes wrap up time, and we'll be played out with one final video. You're on mute, Kath.
So I was at the conference today and we had two workshops. One was, what does good lived experience storytelling look like? And the other one was about a call of action for a campaign. So there's a lot in this, so I'm going to have to go really quite fast. So we split into 4 rooms, and we talked about a way of what the campaign would look like. And so we came up with some ideas around story jams, stories around the campfire, short films which have lots of impact of different stories, short stories of from different people, and the stories to be in different languages, and to be having a big discussion around accessibility and how to make stories accessible. What we talked about a little bit before. And then we talked about the specific campaign, what that would be about. And we looked at policymakers seeing the person behind the story and not just the data. So getting to those policymakers, maybe even getting them to tell a story to see how it feels to be that uncomfortable, but also getting stories out there which within service land, which have been, you know, really damaging and harrowing, but also getting stories of hope and positive stories out there to see that you can make a change and an impact. And then we had another room which we're talking about truth to power, and again, how we can change the system. And it was really about how we get to those people we need to make listen to these stories, and the discussion around the total lack of empathy from sort of you know, the hierarchy, and then there was a general room which talked about spreading the value of lived experience into the corners where it isn't reaching. And there was quite an interesting comment, wording of about
Go on, finish your sentence.
about flipping the hard to reach. Okay, so we've got this whole word, you know, wording about hard to reach groups, whatever. And so the hard to reach groups are those at the top, the hierarchy. And how do we flip that into a context about hard to reach, getting to the professionals, you know, and making them listen, and making them, you know, and shifting that power change, you know. So yeah, that was it in a nutshell. But there was a lot of discussion. It was much more than that. I'm sure I've missed things out.
I think that was a really good summary, and it was a bit mean actually asking you to do 2 workshops in the same time that everybody else had to do one, but brilliant. So do bring in any other comments. Well, let's just have a couple of minutes to kind of reflect and wrap up. I can see in our private chat here, you know, people are putting things like hard to reach, easy to ignore, rarely heard, often ignored, you know, and isn't that just the reality of it so much? Actually, we do know where people are. They're not that hard to find or to reach. So yeah,
people find it hard to I was saying it's not so much that people are hard to reach, people find it hard to listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole thing around you know, it's easy to ignore. It's like if these stories, collective groups, movements like Camarados, etc., can actually elevate those stories, then no one can say they can't hear them or that they're not reachable, which is, you know, that is just a nonsense argument. You know, then things might change. Then that is, I'm sure that's come up actually. I have heard it as well in other workshops. It's not my idea, but I'm just saying it again. Just so it's on the table.
Chris, go on.
This is a good example of how language matters, because when we describe it as such, it defines it sets the perimeters and of the discussion about it, and it constructs a reality that is a social reality that we have to deconstruct and reconstruct. So just to be aware of the importance of words and expressions.
Thank you.
I found it really good today when Tony said that, you know, flipping that hard to reach, because, you know, hard to reach groups, I don't think they're hard to reach because they're just people who live around and I know them. But the hard to reach people are those professionals. They're the commissioners. They're the people at the head of the council. I don't know them. And they are hard to reach. You send them an email. And I've worked with, you know, in various organisations with councillors, and they are hard to reach. And I think it is about changing that, flipping it around and, you know, turning the tables, you know, saying, actually, who do you think you're talking to saying hard to reach? You're the ones who are hard to reach and you should be listening. Sorry.
No, go for it. Brilliant. Soapbox.
But I really liked Tony's. I liked the way
yeah.
he just turned that around, and I thought it makes so much sense to me. You know, it's kind of like, actually, you're not listening.
Yeah.
And I
they need
think
to be told.
I think
Isaac.
probably they are listening even less now because of the constraints and everything else that are going on in the NHS and local councils, that they're listening even less, and that's why we all have to be that much louder to get heard.
Isaac, last word.
So yeah, I just think it's about, for me, I think that I want to get to a space and a place where we don't need to reach out to people. People are living good lives, and we create a space for people to have alternative stories to these problem saturated stories, which often is, you know, the lived experience stories. And how do we help people to create different stories that are ones of hope and dreams and good things, and be mindful, what Tony said, flipping it. Of course, you know, people aren't hard to reach. We just only listen to them.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody. What an amazing ride it's been again this afternoon. And thank you for opening up and sharing the experiences that you've all had. I'll just say thank you to Maf and all the amazing panelists from this morning's broadcast, and everybody from People's Voice Media and everybody who's contributed to, I think, what we all agree as being an incredible experience, for the good and the bad experiences that we've all had through this whole concept of lived experience storytelling. But one person I really need to thank, and I didn't say thank you this morning, is Leon, for holding together behind the scenes these two live broadcasts. And it's no mean feat, the amount of he's playing games, the amount of, he's putting the clock on me, I can see it, the amount of energy that goes into, and the amount of prep that goes into just holding together an hour-ish long broadcast. So thank you, Leon. It's party time. I don't know. He's in.
Come on, Leon. Come and show your face.
Show your face, Leon.
Show your face.
He's got a lovely smile.
Shut up, all of you. It's party time. And to play us out, we've got one final video of the series of short videos that was made. And this one is from Sandra. And I think it's an appropriate place to end, because Sandra talks about the importance of stories in times of change, the importance of lived experience stories in helping us to imagine the future. And although a lot of what we've talked about is the experiences that we're living now and the changes that we want to see now, actually the future is what's important in this as well. And how does where we go from here influence our experience of the future? So yeah, let's hear from Sandra, and thank you, and I'll see you at the party. Goodbye.
Let me start with a story from the 1990s. When I was studying, I read a book of Benedict Anderson on imagined communities. And for me, it was really an eye-opener to read about the importance of stories in times of change. During the Industrial Revolution, the reading of books and the reading of common stories was one of the vehicles to create national identities, to create the national communities. And this was, of course, built around a common language and around the development of journals, newspapers, and book publishing. Now, a couple of decades later, or even 1 century later, we assist to a new revolution, the digital revolution. And instead of having an industrial society or a post-industrial society, we live in a communication society. And now Benedict Anderson is coming to my mind again, because the stories we tell each other are important to find out what is our vision of the future. How do we imagine our future system? And we all know that the actual political system is not working anymore. On the one hand, that we assist to globalization. And on the other hand, there are a lot of people who wish to not to have any changes and not to see people from other parts of the world in their countries. However, what is the role of stories in this? In fact, everybody tells stories, and stories are also used to for propaganda purposes. The digital possibilities of social media give politicians a very big platform. Tweets, Facebook, all big tech, they use our attention and our interest in stories to occupy our minds. In fact, there is a war going on, the war of our attention. What are we going to read? What are we going to consume? And what are we going to believe? There is a big noise on the internet, and many stories come to us, and we need to shift. We need to find out what we wish to read and what we wish to see. So there is a lot of storytelling. What is the role of movements like community reporting in this? For me, it is not only about storytelling, which is of course also important, because telling stories of lived experience is not the same as using stories for propaganda purposes or for convincing people of your own right. No, stories of lived experience are important because everybody has a right to express what he feels, what his opinions, and how he would or she would see his own future. So stories of lived experience are central elements for giving form to our future. This is one point. The second point is that this telling should be always linked to sharing. And this is also what we do in the community reporter movement. However, sharing of stories should be more emphasized. And sharing is also about listening. And listening to stories is sometimes more difficult than telling stories.